Hey there! In this lecture, we will continue talking about operators and operator precedence. So for this example, let's say that we want to calculate if John is of full age only based on the year in which he was born. So let's first declare a couple of variables. So now is 2018. The year John was born was 1989. And then we also define the full age variable. And that's the age at which you officially become of full age. So in most of Europe, that's 18, maybe in the US, it's 21, I'm not sure, but let's use 18 here for this example, okay? And so what we can do is to calculate the age and then compare it with 18 here. And we're missing the equal sign, of course. And so what I want to do is to do all of that calculation all in one line, okay? So var is full age and then equal now minus year John, and that will calculate the age, and then we want to test if it's greater or equal to the full age. Okay, so does that make sense? So let's take a look at this and try to figure out why this works. So you see that we have actually two operators. We have the minus and then this logical greater or equal operator all in one line. So all in here. Now, how does JavaScript know which operator actually to execute first? Because imagine that first this here would be executed. So we would ask if year John is greater or equal of full age, which would return a true or false value. And then we would do now minus this true or false value. And so this would be nothing significant. So this would not be what we want. Instead, what we want is for this year to be executed first. So now minus the year of John. And then we want to compare that age with the full age. So this here works, and let's actually test that. And I'm going to show you why in a second. Okay, so this actually returns true, and of course John is of full age. So in 2018, born in 1989, he is 29, and so of course he is of full age. Now in order to figure out why this works here, we have to think about operator precedence, which means which operator is executed first. And so if you come here to my resources page at codingheroes.io/resources, down here in the JavaScript section, you will find this operator precedence. Okay, so let's open up that link. And then down here, we have the operator precedence table. And so what we see here is that the operators that are here on the top of the list will be executed before the others. So you see that the one with the highest precedence is using this grouping here with the parentheses. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But what we're interested in here is our plus, or actually our minus operator, which is this one, and our logical operator greater or equal. So this one here. And so what we can see from this table is that the minus operator has a precedence of 16. Okay, so that's what this value here is the precedence value, which is greater than the one from the greater or equal operator, which is only 11. And so what that means is that this minus here will be executed first. And so all of this is executed first, and then we end up with the result here. So in this case, it will be 29. And then only after that, 29 will be compared with the full age with this operator, which has a lower precedence with only 11. Okay? And so after that, we end up with the result, which in this case here will be false. So let's actually write that here. Or actually, it is true. And so right now we have var is full age equals true. And what I want to show you next is that the equal operator itself, and where is it? Ah, here it is. So the assignment operator, as it's called, is also an operator itself. And I mentioned that to you in one of the last lectures, and now it makes sense. Okay, so you see that this equal operator is the one with the lowest, or almost one of the lowest precedence. And that makes total sense, because of course we want the assignment to happen as the last step. So after all the other operators have done its work, in this case or minus and or equal or greater than operator, they all have done their work now, and we end up with the true result. And so as a final step, it is then assigned to the isFullAge variable. All right, does that make sense? So actually we not only have two operators, but we have three. The first one that gets executed is this one, then this one, and finally the assignment operator. All right. And whenever we need to know if something works, the order in which our operators work, you can always just consult this table here, which is why I put it here right on my resources page under the JavaScript section. All right, so let's now look at another example where we want to calculate the average age of John and his friend. So let's say age John, because we haven't really calculated it. We only calculated it here. So let's actually grab this here. So now minus the year John, and then the age of Mark. And let's just say it's 35 without any calculations here. And so the average will be to basically calculate the sum and then divide it by 2. So age John plus age Mark divided by 2. But this is not really correct, right? And you know that from your math classes that you had in school probably. And so you know that this dividing operator here will have precedence over the plus, okay? And so let's confirm that in JavaScript it also works like that. And you can see that right here. So the division here has a higher precedence of 14 than the addition of 13. And actually when we talked about this example here, I mistakenly used this operator here, which is the unary plus, but I meant this one here, so this addition operator. But of course it still has a higher precedence than the greater. Okay, so it doesn't really matter using this here or the unary plus operator. Okay, it's a different operator, but in terms of precedence, the addition is still higher than this logical operator. Okay, anyway, what we need to do here is to group this here together with parentheses, just like, again, you learned in your math class probably. And so that makes sense because we see up here that with the highest precedence, we have the grouping. Okay, and so that's using parentheses. And so if we do this, well, then this operation here has the highest precedence. So first we add up the age of John and Mark, and only then we can divide it by 2 in order to create the average age. So let's just take a look at it in the console, just to make sure that everything's working correctly. And so indeed, it is 32. And that's because, and let's quickly do it here in the console, 35 plus 29 is 64, and 64 divided by 2 is of course 32. So this calculation here is correct. Let's just add some comments here. So this is with multiple operators. Then here we have grouping. And now let's do some more examples with grouping and multiple assignments. So let's say that we have a value that we want to assign to multiple variables at the same time. And that's totally possible in JavaScript. And so let's create 2 variables, x and y. And so right now I'm not really creating variables with a meaningful name here, but that's no problem. This is just for doing some mathematical operations, okay? And so let's just start by saying x equals, and just some math operations here. Let's say 3 plus 5, and then times 4 minus 6. Okay, so just something like this. And so we already know which will have precedence here, right? So the grouping has precedence, and this will then turn out to be 8. And so let's actually write it down here. So after the first step, we have 8 times 4 minus 6. Then the next step will be this multiplication here, right? So 8 times 4 is 32 minus 6. And finally, this will then turn out to be 26, okay? So x will be 26, and let's log that to the console, just to make sure. And indeed, here it is. So 26 is the result of this calculation. And so, as before, it did all of these operations, and only then it did the assignment. Now, if we wanted to assign this to x and y at the same time, we could very simply do x equals y, and then equals this entire calculations here. Now, the question here is why this actually works. Imagine that we're reading this line here, and we see x is equal to y. And so at this point, y is still undefined, right? Because we didn't define any value for it before this line. And so it would be kind of logical that x would be undefined at this point, but it is not. Let's take a look at that actually. And this is something that we didn't do before, which is to log 2 things at the same time. So we can say console log and then x and then a comma and then another variable. And so we see 26 and 26. So 2 results at the same time with the console.log. And so what we see here is that 26 is not undefined, which would be logical. So again, because y is undefined at this point, and if we say x equal to something that is undefined, well then x should also be undefined. But it's not. And so let's take a look at why that happens. And I can show it to you here in the table again. So we have the precedence here that we already talked before, but we also have the associativity. And what this simply means is the direction in which the operation is executed. So if we come down here to, for example, the multiplication or the addition, we have left to right. Okay, and so all that means is that, for example, if we had, let's add it as a comment, if we had 2 plus 4 plus 5, then it would do it from the left side to the right side. So first the 2 plus 4, which is 6, and then 6 plus 5 to 11. But there are some operators that work the other way around, so which are right from left. And the assignment operator is one of them. So here we have assignment, and assignment works from right to left. Okay, so that's the other way around. And so that is why this piece of code here actually works, because we end up with the result here of 26, and then the assignment works from right to left. So it doesn't start by doing x equal y, but instead it starts by saying y equal 26, and only then it does x equals 26. Okay, does that make sense? So again, the assignment operator works not from the left to the right, but from the right to the left. And so here we end up with a result of 26, and then that is assigned to y, and then that again in turn is assigned to x. And so therefore we end up with 26 in both these variables. Okay, so that is the associativity. That's the second part of the table that I wanted to show you. So we don't just have to keep precedence in mind, but also the associativity. All right, and now just to finish this lecture, I just want to show you some more operators. So let's say that we wanted to double x. So something like x equals x times 2. Right? So that would be the double of x. But you see that we're actually repeating the x here. Okay, and so in JavaScript, there's a way of making this a bit more simple, which is simply saying x multiply equal 2. Okay, and so this is the exact same thing. So what this means is that basically it will do x times 2 without us to having to write out that x times here like we did here. Okay, so let's take a look at the result. And so 52 is indeed 26 times 2, which was x before. And the same thing would work for plus, minus, or multiply. So we can say x plus equal 10. And so what do you think this will turn out to be? And I hope that you guessed 62, right? So that is 52, which is the result from before, plus 10. So it's the exact same thing as writing x equals x plus 10. All right? So that makes our lives a bit easier. And these operators, you have them down here in the assignment section, because they are actually assignment operators, just like the normal assignment operator. Okay, and now just the last one that I want to show you is the increment. So what we can do instead of writing x equals x plus 1 would be to write it like this. So we could do x plus equals 1, but there's an even simpler way if we only want to add 1. And that is to simply write x plus plus. And so this operator simply adds 1 unit to the variable that we're using this operator on, okay? So this is all the same thing here, but of course this one is the easiest to write and the most handy one. So just to prove you that it actually works, let's log this one to the console as well. And so it's of course 63. And the same way it works with minus minus. And so right now it should be 61. And yeah, indeed it is. So that was a lot to take in up until this point. You learned all about variables, data types, and also operators. So I hope that it's all making sense to you, that you're having some fun. And so next up, there's coming a coding challenge where you can put all of these new skills to practice in a fun and small challenge that I have for you in the next video.